Well, good morning and welcome everybody to this meeting co-organized by the Union for the Mediterranean and UN Habitat. I'm Victoria Jimenez, I'm head of sector for urban development at the Union for the Mediterranean, and I will be chairing the beginning of this meeting, let's say. For those of you who might not be that familiar with our organization, we are an international organization with 42 member states, including the 27 EU countries, plus 15 countries from North Africa, Western Balkans, Middle East, and Turkey. And the main goal of our organization is to promote collaboration at the technical level among our member states. So on urban development, thanks to the Dutch government, the Technical University of Delft assisted us in drafting an action plan that we are finalizing right now and that it's going to be adopted by our member states. This action plan will set the priorities in which our countries will focus in the coming years. And one of those priorities is national urban policies and also integrated city strategies, let's say urban policies and urban legislation. So to do that, we count on working together with the National Urban Policy Program led by the OECD and by UN Habitat in order to not to repeat what they are already doing, basically. But we thought that this research that we are going to present and to discuss today, and that has already been done, could be a good opportunity to do like a focus on the work that UN Habitat and the OECD are already doing at a more general way, to focus on a concrete aspects of urban legislation. So the research has already been conducted a comparative analysis among many countries, and what we are proposing, what we are promoting here is its extension to the rest of the UFM member states. The meeting today will be an introductory meeting. Some other meetings might follow if necessary, and will probably follow in the future. The idea today is to share with you the main findings and explain to you the kind of information that will be needed from each one of those missing countries to extend the comparative analysis that has already been done for many of the countries. So to start with, we will be introducing the legal or / political framework that we have in place, which is the 2008 Protocol on Integrated Coastal Zone Management, Mediterranean Protocol on Integrated Coastal Zone Management, that 22 countries already signed, and the EU as such, if I'm not mistaken. So we have this regulatory framework on one side, and then we have also at EU level a recommendation on integrated coastal zone management that turned into a directive for all the part related to marine planning, but not for the part related to land, because, well, I guess that land is always a controversial issue, and that countries that do not accept any international intervention on that. But so I think that we can start, and I will pass the floor directly first to Gianluca Crispin from UN Habitat to introduce what UN Habitat is doing, well, the national urban policies, and also what UN Habitat is doing on urban policies, especially on some of the non-EU countries. So Gianluca, the floor is yours.
Victoria. Thank you, Victoria. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. My name is Gianluca Crispin, and I work for UN Habitat. UN Habitat is the UN agency responsible to promote sustainable urbanization. Well-planned and well-governed cities are key to address issues related to poverty, social exclusion, especially inequality, and to promote shared prosperity. Specifically, I work for the policy legislation and governance section of UN Habitat, and our main mandate is to help countries put in place the enabling environment to implement internationally agreed strategies and goals, including the Sustainable Development Goals, the New Urban Agenda, and the Paris Agreement. In particular, we support countries in putting in place the key enablers to implement nationally these international agreed commitments. In particular, we support the development of national urban policies. There are instruments that help countries and cities achieve economic growth and economic sustainability and social inclusion through aligning all different sectorial policies and ensure that all policies that affect urban areas are coherent. We have joint efforts with the OECD and Cities Alliance. We have created a few years ago the National Urban Policy Program, which is a global initiative for countries in their efforts to develop and implement national urban policies. And so far, we have supported more than 50 national urban policy processes in the global south. UN Habitat also supports national and local governments in translating urban policies into effectively implementable laws by supporting legal assessments and reforms and building capacities for evidence-based lawmaking. Going to the topic of today's conference, we know that a large proportion of the world population has always lived close to the coast and still does. The most recent projections say that 40% of the world population live within 100 meters of the coast. Human settlement has always been drawn to coastal areas because they provide resources and trading opportunities, but also expose residents to various hazards. Some coastal hazards, including sea level rise and extreme weather events, are expected to increase as a result of climate change. The low elevation coastal zones, which are the 10 meters of elevation from the coastal line, provide host today 10% of the world's population, which is 600 million people, meaning that 1 every 10 people today live at a risk of flooding and sea level rise. Development, at the same time, development along the coast compete with the environmental preservation that threatens local history and culture. There is today an urgent need to rethink and reassess the way we manage coastal zone and ocean space. Legal and regulatory frameworks play a key role in demarcating land for special protection, defining private and public rights, regulating development and directing the use of land along coastal zones. Any integrated coastal management to be effective needs to consider issues related to land use planning and property rights. These research projects on international perspective for land management instruments for regulating coastal zone is extremely timely and useful. The comparative approach that is proposing is essential because it encourages cross-national learning among countries sharing the Mediterranean towards the adoption of more effective legal regulatory instruments. These are necessary to meet the challenges of coastal sustainability and to promote resilience in the face of climate change. UN Habitat is very happy to see the large interest that this initiative has received, with tens of researchers from all corners of the Mediterranean that are willing to contribute and that are present today. I wish you a productive and engaging conference today, and I look forward engaging and advancing this project, for which this conference is only the first step. Thank you, Victoria. Over to you.
Thank you, Gianluca. Only to say that the Mediterranean, but not only, because we have also the whole 27 EU countries. So, and we have received also expressions of interest from some of the non-Mediterranean EU countries that we welcome as well. So now I will give the floor to the representative of the European Commission, which is Juan Ronco. Juan Ronco is a policy officer dealing with maritime spatial planning at the Directorate General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, and he will be referring to the EU recommendation on integrated coastal zone management and its links with the directive that was effectively approved. So Juan, if you are here.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this event, I would call it. Well, just before I start, I think I have 10 minutes. Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay, so before I start, a couple of things that I wanted to say. So first of all, I am not an expert in integrated coastal zone management. So I want to lower your expectations in this regard. I am working on maritime spatial planning, and that will be the main subject of my talk. But I will at the end discuss some links, or I would call them issues related to integrated coastal zone management. So how does MSP relate to integrated coastal zone management? My presentation is about 32 slides. I would say fly through these presentations. But you will find most of the stuff in the Commission website, so no problem with that. And so, okay, let's go. I will share my my screen. So let me see. Okay. I hope it works. So let me go to the first slide. So you are getting a preview of. Sorry about.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah, you see it.
Not full screen.
Okay. Let me work on that. I have an issue here with my. Hello.
Yes. Also, we see like a black bar.
Yes.
At the right. I think it's the list of participants. If you can minimize it, or.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
No, it's worse. In fact.
It's worse. Sorry.
We still see it on the right.
You need to hide.
Yes, that's what I was trying to do. Let me see. Sorry, I will. That's a bit. Sorry, I'm a bit lost now.
Do you have something on the right of your screen?
Yes, I have you. I can see you.
Can you move it to the bottom of your screen?
Yes, now.
No, I still see it. Now. Okay.
Can you see now my screen? My.
Yes, or.
But not in full.
No.
Not in full screen. I am sorry about that. What about this?
En la barra superior tiene que esconder las.
Yes, but I am not getting.
Well, but now
vaya a las opciones de la barra superior.
Sorry, but no, I am hearing someone that is making. I mean. Suggesting things to me, but I cannot go to the upper. Sorry, I don't know why. Oh yes.
Well, let's continue like this. Okay. We see it. Let's
and now is it okay now? Okay, but now I think you can see now my. Okay, so you can see now my. Sorry about this. Okay, so that's as I mentioned to you, I want to speak about MSP and integrated maritime. Sorry, in MSP and the links with the ICCM. So let's start with this. So the EU MSP directive. So the EU MSP directive was adopted in 2014. Why MSP? So you see here some of the reasons, but not all, that led to the adoption of the Maritime Special Planning Directive in the EU. Reduce conflicts, that's one of the main reasons, but not the only one. Preserving the marine environment is a very important one, and there are others. So the adoption of the directive, as I said, was in 2014. These are the main components, I would say, of the directive. You see here under point 4, so the member countries of the EU, when preparing their plans, should take into account land-sea interactions. That's why one way of, or one link, very important link with integrated coastal zone management. Maritime special planning in the EU, very specifically, member states have to do their planning. So it's something that countries have to do for themselves. It's not the European Union or the Commission that will do that. What the EU provides is a framework. So a framework law, which is a directive, with legal requirements and with support for cross-border planning projects. Small parenthesis here. In the email I received the invitation, I was asked to discuss why member states in the EU adopted the protocol on ICZM in the Mediterranean, and why didn't they approve the components of ICZM in the directive. So the directive doesn't have this component of coastal zone management. Well, I think one of the main reasons is because with the directive, member states have to do things, and if they don't do the requirements that are laid out in the directive, there are penalties for this. I think in the protocol of the Mediterranean, I don't know whether there are penalties. I don't think so. So this is a very constraining element of EU legislation, and that's why perhaps member states thought, okay, we will ratify this protocol at Mediterranean, the level of the Mediterranean. But when it comes to do these things at EU level, we will perhaps be much more cautious, because there could be sanctions attached to non-compliance to the directive. So, okay, I close the parenthesis here. So this is the directive, some of the provisions. So when it enters into force, when it has to be translated into national law, and when national plans had to be established. The deadline passed. It was the 31st of March this year. Not all member states have done their homework, but they are very busy with that. So some of them did, and some of them are working on their plans. So we are still waiting to get all the plans from member states. These are the key requirements that are to be found in the directive. These are more process-driven requirements, I would say, but there are still some requirements that relate to real, content in the sense of, for instance, zoning in the marine environment. The directive has connections with other EU instruments, such as the Marine Strategy Framework Directive or the Water Framework Directive and others. This is an example of a maritime special plan. This is the North Sea part of the German exclusive economic zone. Interestingly enough, in Germany, the Länder have powers to plan in the marine environment up to 12 miles in the marine environment, so the territorial sea. So this is a very interesting point, because they can integrate, so to say, their territorial planning with marine planning at Länder level. This is the Dutch plan, less detailed, but still. And then we got here the Belgian Maritime Plan. Belgium has a very small marine domain. They have 60 miles of coast, but still very packed, very, I would say, busy sea. And as you see, they have planned in great detail what they will do with their sea. This is Latvia's maritime plan. Again, also very tiny marine area, but still very busy. We are supporting member states in implementing or preparing these plans. We fund MSP cross-border projects. So we encourage the cooperation of member states to prepare the plans, because obviously the cross-border and transnational implications of maritime spatial planning may be huge. We have also to think that the marine environment doesn't know, ecosystems do not know borders. So that's why we are insisting very much on this cross-border dimension. We call it the sea basing dimension. So you see here that we are in fact funding projects per sea basing. So we bring together member states from different countries, and they cooperate, they work on a project on cross-border issues. This is a slide giving an overview of some of the projects we are funding through different instruments. So we have the fisheries, European Maritime and Fisheries Funds, but we have also regional development funds, the Interreg Fund, or even the Research and Development Fund, so the Horizon 2020 or the Framework Program 7 that were used to fund these projects. We have what we call the EU MSP Platform, which is a dedicated expert team that is providing knowledge and expertise to member states and to the Commission, but also to the broad public on maritime spatial planning. You see there the web address. It's available for everybody. So if you are interested in the maritime spatial planning, have a look at that. We have also a member state expert group. So these are representatives from member states who come together regularly to discuss maritime spatial planning issues, to exchange experiences, and make even suggestions for the improvement of EU legislation on that level. Internationally, the MSP is gaining traction, lots of traction, I would say. The Commission, together with IOC UNESCO, launched in 2017 a joint roadmap to accelerate maritime marine spatial planning processes worldwide. It included 10 actions. We are working with MSP Global, with IOC UNESCO on that. And I invite you to have a look at their website, MSP Global is it called. You see what's going on there. MSP in terms of policy is gaining also traction in terms of its implementation or its application. So maritime spatial plans are covering more and more sea space. So this is what the EU is I would say, leading the pack in the sense that we will have 23 countries, some of which with a huge maritime domain having their plans, but others in other regions of the world also are implementing and preparing and implementing plans. Okay, so we have this recommendation at EU level for the integrated coastal zone management. I must say that the implementation of this recommendation is, of course, this rests also with member states. The Commission has done a number of things to facilitate the implementation of this Council decision. Of this recommendation, because we have also the Council decision ratifying the ICCM protocol in the Mediterranean. So projects have been funded on this. There was an evaluation, but it's for member states to do this integrated coastal zone management. You see here that how the different instruments in terms of directives or the recommendation works in terms of coverage. So for the coastal zone, we have some overlap, for instance, with the Water Framework Directive or the Marine Strategy Directive and the MSP Directive, but I think this is only for a small part of the coast. I think this is up to for the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. It reaches up to 1 kilometer from the coast. The MSP Directive is it covers coastal waters as well. And here I just picked up an article in Marine Policy, which is a academic journal on marine issues, showing the differences between the marine environment and the terrestrial environment. Here you see, well, these building blocks. Development control. I think in this document that you that was prepared by these two scientists, I would say, from the Technion Institute in Israel. There was this talk about hardware and software. I mean, hardware is relating to the legal instruments in the coastal zone management, and software related to governance. I think this is very interesting because if I look to the marine environment, for instance, property rights. This is something that in the marine environment are pretty centralized, because it's the government who is owning the space, or the country, or the coastal state. Now there are perhaps property rights creeping in through concessions for offshore wind energy, for instance, but it's pretty much, or fisheries rights, but it's pretty much a block that is homogeneously, I would say, owned by the states, So there's a big difference. The other big difference that I found is conservation. I think that in this document it wasn't covered, the conservation and environmental dimension, but in the marine environment this is absolutely key. So you got this space is populated by living creatures, and this is something that ecosystems, and this is something that characterizes, I would say, maritime spatial planning very much. So ecosystems-based approach management is very important, and this has quite a lot of implications. For instance, to reserve space for conservation in terms of marine protected areas. Okay, this is my before last slide. It's a bit thought-provoking. This is a poster produced by someone in Belgium showing how the North Sea could like in 2070. And so you see that there is a pretty busy area there with lots of installations, structures, artificial ports, wind farms, even leisure areas. So my question is, and this is perhaps something for our research question, how would maritime spatial planning impact integrated coastal zone management? Imagine all these things at sea, what will be the impact of this on integrated coastal zone management? If we have more things at sea, do we need perhaps less things on the coast, less activity? So this is something that could be a result of a increased use of the marine space. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say, and thanks again for having me today.
Thank you, Juan. At the beginning, I panicked when you say 32 slides, but at the end, it went very quickly, and it was very interesting. A bit frustrating to see how many things are happening in the sea, and that it's not the same for the land, but well, and I think that the reference made to the article, I think that the discussion here today is going to follow on this reference that you made. So now I will give the floor to Selika Skarishik. I don't know if I pronounced it well. Selika is director of the of the PAPRAC Center, which is a UN Environment Regional Activities Center, and they are monitoring the implementation of the ICCTM protocol, if I'm not mistaken. And she will be, Selika will be introducing and explaining in more detail the Mediterranean Coastal Zone Management Protocol. So Selika.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity to present the ICCTM protocol. I will try to share my screen now. Is it okay? Can you see it?
Perfect, yes.
Okay. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about the protocol on integrated coastal zone management in the Mediterranean, which is still a worldwide unique regional legally binding document of the kind. It's a document that is innovative because it represents an innovation in the international law. It is forward-looking and proactive because it tries not only to protect the coastal zones, but coastal zones of the Mediterranean, but also to prevent possible problems. It's a comprehensive because it covers a huge range of issues that should be addressed while dealing with coastal management. It's integrated because it tries to integrate all stakeholders and all important authorities and institutions that can bring added value to coastal management. And of course, last but not less important, it looks at the integrity of the coastal ecosystems, which means that it looks on both sides of the coastal zone, which is land and sea part of the coastal zone. The protocol is in force in the Mediterranean since 2011. In orange are indicated the countries that have ratified the protocol, but also the European Union as a contracting party to the Barcelona Convention has ratified, which means that all the countries, EU member states, that have not yet ratified have the obligation to comply with the provisions of the protocol. We also know that some other countries like Tunisia are well advanced in the process of ratification. Also, there are some attempts in Algeria. Greece is doing a lot, and also Cyprus. So we hope, and Italy as well. So we hope that very soon we shall have announcement of some new ratifications, and which means also translation of the protocol provisions into national legislations. What are the basic principles? The basic principles of...
We've lost you. Selika?
Yes, I'm here.
Now, we lost you for some minutes.
Okay, so shall I repeat something or?
No, well, in this, basically when you were starting with this slide.
Okay, great. So the basic principles of the first one is really to look at the integrity of the ecosystem, of the coastal ecosystem, which means that ecosystem-based management is the key for preserving this integrity, the integrity of ecosystems and services that they provide, and also of the sea and landscapes. Then, even if it was negotiated in the beginning of this century, the protocol was really forward-looking because it took into consideration all coastal risks and hazards, including climate change, which is nowadays one of the major topics that we have all deal with in coastal zones. Including the consideration of sea level rise, also urban heats, and many other issues that are brought by climate change. And then, of course, the key for integrated coastal zone management is really establishment of good governance mechanism for including all relevant stakeholders that can bring added value to this process. The protocol is very bold in giving some definitions. First of all, it gives in its Article 3 the definition of the coastal zone, saying that it is composed of land and sea and sea part. The land part of the coastal zone extends to the limit of the competent administrative unit, and this is administrative border because it was difficult to find a common denominator for 21 different countries. So this definition was left a bit loose. It might be a coastal community, municipality, it might be a coastal region. It depends on the administrative setting of the country. While the definition of the seaward limit of the coastal zone is very clear. It is the external limit of the territorial water of the parties. So this means that every time that we pronounce the word coastal zone, we also refer not only to the terrestrial part, but also to the sea part of the coastal zone. Then this is why these last years we have focused our work on introducing marine spatial planning and putting all the Mediterranean countries, let's say, at the same or at the similar level with the EU member states. We have produced several documents, including this conceptual framework for marine spatial planning, which, at difference of the protocol, is not a legally binding document, but it gives the frame and provides guidance for the countries to do marine spatial planning. And also we look very much, one of the key components is looking at land-sea interactions. As the representative of EU said, this is something that is really basic for linking land and sea use planning. And if there could be less activities on land while maritime sector is growing, I would say that I don't know for one single maritime activity that has not his basis on land and has not impact on land and does not have to use land to develop. So this is something to consider very much, even while doing MSP. Then the protocol gives the definition of the ICZM as a process, as a dynamic process for sustainable use, for sustainable development of coastal zones, looking at the same time to the fragility of coastal ecosystems and landscapes, diversity of activities and uses that are present in coastal zones, and also again at this integration of marine and land parts for the sake of the integrity of the ecosystem. There are several provisions in the protocol for the protection and sustainable use of the coastal zone. The most difficult one to negotiate was the Article 7 on setback zone of 100 meters, in which in non-urbanized areas there should be no more construction. So this is something that was really difficult to negotiate, but the countries understood the need to stop this ribbon development all along the Mediterranean coast. And at the end of the day, the provision was accepted, and in some cases it can be even extended up to 3,000 or 3,000 meters on 1 kilometer. Some of the countries have translated it in that way in their national legislations. Of course, there could be some exceptions from this rule of setback zone of 100 meters due to let's say geomorphological features of the coast, or some need or because of a need to have some priority constructions of national interest. But all these are to be considered as exception, and also they have to be notified by to the Barcelona Convention and also included in national laws. And then there are several provisions also important to stop the urbanization, to stop the situations like this one, to restrict the linear extension of urban development, to guarantee the free access to the sea and along the shore. Then some other provisions to restrict movement of cars, parking, and also movement of vessels and other devices along the shore and near the shore. So these are very strict provisions, which were, I would repeat again, either rather hard to negotiate, but still the countries, the Mediterranean countries, understood that there will be no change if some legal obligation is not imposed to this issue. Of course, any coastal plan that we within the Barcelona Convention support countries to produce is not a legally binding plan. It's an indicative plan, but what is important, these provisions have to be translated into land use plans, national land use plans, which are legally binding for the countries. And then there are several provisions again about the economic activities that use coastal zone, agriculture and industry, fishing and aquaculture, tourism, which is a big issue in the Mediterranean. Then using of mineral sands, coastal aquifers, then construction of energy, infrastructure, ports, everything that is related to maritime activities. And in this schematic representation, everybody can see that it is really important to link land and sea use. It is important to have sectoral approaches and sectoral strategies and plan harmonized, because they are all using the same space and they are very often in clash. It is important to look for reducing conflicts, for a good share of the space, and also all the time keeping in mind the need to protect the environment on which many of these activities depend. And then again, there are some specific provision for some specific ecosystems on wetlands and estuaries, marine habitats, coastal forests and woods, dunes, wetlands in particular are important for this nowadays as an approach for combating climate change, for reducing heats, for applying nature-based solutions. So this is something also that was really very forward-looking while we were discussing this ICZM protocol. Coastal landscapes, again, it is one of the rare documents that integrates coastal landscapes into need for their protection and planning of their use. Then islands are something that is really important for several Mediterranean states, which have archipelago and many islands to protect and to use stable. And also cultural heritage, including underwater cultural heritage, is something that is also addressed in the protocol with specific articles. Of course, a key word for achieving the objectives of the protocol is coordination, integration in all senses, and also good governance mechanisms. For this, very important is to establish to have this adaptive management approach, to establish a good dialogue between science and the decision and policy makers. And this dialogue should be all the time, should go in two directions, and provide good information for decision makers to be able to take right decisions for the sake of social and ecosystem resilience. So basically, that would be in short, what is the ICZM protocol? Of course, a lot of information, the ways that it is implemented through coastal management projects, through awareness raising activities, to capacity building, and many other things can be found on the website of PAPRAC, and its specific section on ICZM protocol, which is the very interactive platform. And with this, I would like to thank you for your interest and and I will remain for any question that you might have with this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Delika. I will say, it was a very illustrative presentation, and I think that for those who are not familiar with the protocol, for sure, very, very useful. I will give now the floor to Rachel Alderman and also to Sigal Pelak to present. Let's say that we enter now into the core of the meeting. They will be presenting the main findings of the research that they conducted. They will surely coming back and to some of the issues of your presentation, Celica. So Rachel, and the idea now is that Rachel and Sigal present the main findings of the research, and afterwards the idea is to have open discussion with the participants, with those interested participants into the country report for the respective countries, and also to have a discussion with some of the authors of the book that are, if I'm not mistaken, are also participating in the meeting. So Rachel, if you are here.
Yes, of course.
The floor is yours. I think yes. I saw your screen some seconds ago, but now not anymore. So if you want to.
Yes, I want to say hello to everybody first before I share the screen.
I'm not seeing you. I don't know if you. Okay. Yes, now we see you.
Hello, everybody. My colleague Sigal and I are happy to share the findings of our book. Let me put the presentation on, but first let me also thank old friends, Gianluca Crispin, who summarized the essence of our book very much, and Zelika. Zelika visited the Technion in Haifa in, I think it was 2014 or 2013, when we started an EU-funded project about coastal zone preservation. The book was only triggered by that. The book is not the direct outcome of that project. The direct outcome is on the internet. It was called Mare Nostrum, and there's lots of Mare Nostrums. But if you click Mare Nostrum and maybe my name, then you will see that project. So let me now share the screen. This always wastes a few seconds. Okay, let me put this on full screen. Okay, this book is by Routledge, and I'd like to introduce myself. I'm professor of urban planning and law at the Technion. Sigal Pelak is currently a PhD candidate, but this research is not the topic of her PhD. It's something totally else. It's about amendments to plans. My research is always comparative international. So anybody interested in this issue of flexibility and non-flexibility within statutory planning systems. Sigal was my right hand during the Mare Nostrum project, and then we went on to do this book. Thanks very much, Victoria, Union for the Mediterranean. Thanks very much, the EU. Thanks very much, Juan, for this excellent introduction. Wow, there I go. First, let me say what this book is not about, because it is a rather strange book in the discourse, certainly the government or multi-government discourse of ICZM. What it is not a book about the norms of ICZM and how good it is. They're behind us. We wouldn't do these projects if we didn't think these norms are good, but we don't present them again. We don't preach them again. There is a lot of literature about how good these are. This is not an environmental book. We do not take the ecosystem approach because that is not our specialization. And there is lots of ecosystem-based approaches that actually assess the environment and test the environment, and they have indicators in that. The ecosystem-based approach is integral within ICZM, but it's not our direct focus. And there are many government reports about ICZM, certainly following the PAC-RAC initiatives, the ICZM protocol in the Mediterranean countries, certainly in the EU and in many other countries. The UN Habitat is represented here because it is relevant. The World Bank is relevant. OECD is relevant. But this is not a government report. It is purely academic, and there's absolutely no governments involved at all in this book. And we do not address maritime or marine spatial planning. Thanks very much to Juan for this excellent presentation, and also to Jelika. This is not our focus, and I'll tell you why. Because this book focuses on land only. Land is very different from the sea in terms of legal and institutional aspects. Juan, you touched on some of this, and so did Jelika. But it's not only that the sea is national, it's also because land and property rights tend to be multi-generational, often hundreds of years old. There are many interests on a tiny piece of land. It is common people's essential and most valuable resources. It is also often companies' most valuable resources. And yes, the marine spatial planning does touch on resources, since the discovery of oil and gas and other facilities. But then the interests are totally different. They're new interests and they're corporate interests. They're not decentralized into an entire society. I've spent all my career in studying land, and land is an endlessly stubborn, excuse the monkey, sorry, the donkey here. Land is stubborn to move. Land laws are very difficult to change. They're traumatic to change. They encounter a lot of political and civic resistance, and therefore we focus on land, because you cannot do ICZM on land without addressing these topics. We also focus on the impediments, that is not only on the successes, but on the difficulties. And ICZM is very far from full implementation of its ideals because of land issues. I project that the maritime issues settled through international law. Some of them will be easier. I'm not saying that they're easy, but at least on my scale and the time scale, they will be easier to resolve. And we also take an international comparative perspective. And that is, and Gianluca touched on this a little bit, we do this for mutual learning, yes, but also because the ICZM norms, many of them, excluding the 100-meter norm in the internationally legally binding Barcelona Protocol, the norms are amorphous. For example, what is good coordination? What is good integration? When is the end of that? Are we doing well or not? Are we progressing? And most of the assessments, if they don't take a comparative scale, you can't tell. In a comparative scale, you can't tell either, but you can at least see on that scale, if it's many countries, you can see what's possible. And public policy is defined by the creator of the public policy academic area by Wildavsky. It's defined as the art of the possible. That is, what is realistically possible? So we take this reality check by taking the scale. And in this book, we take an extremely large scale in terms of very careful international comparison. So we look at law and policy in 15 countries. The systematic comparative assessment is not just based on shared guidelines that we gave our country authors. We did many rounds where we, the editors, Sigal and I, suggested rewriting, asked cross-national questions, tried to tweak and to try to put the scales even inside understanding the concepts. Land regulation, legal concepts are not easy to understand. Believe me, I've been doing this for decades and there are many surprises. Same terms mean different things, sometimes opposite things. So this comparison is systematic. Our authors, some of whom are present in this meeting, and thank you very much for joining. I hope we see them more later. These are all top academic scholars who branch planning law and land law and public policy or planning policy, sometimes also environmental policy. So what are the countries? You could see that we have 3 groups. The EU member countries, it was important for us to differentiate because we assess not only comparatively across the 15 countries, but also in respect to the 2 international norms. And as Angelica said, the ICCM Barcelona Convention or Protocol is the largest, the only large-scale international law statement or norm in the world. There are smaller ones, but this is really, and it is, and most of the countries have ratified it. So in theory, it is binding to them. In the previous research, in the Mare Nostrum research, we actually surveyed the extent, this will interest you, Angelica, the extent of knowledge of ground people, not high government people, about the protocol. Most had no idea that it exists on the ground. And then the international soft law, the ICCM recommendations by the European Union. I have another explanation. You, Victoria, asked Juan to answer why the soft law, why the European ICCM recommendation became soft law. And in real time, I kind of was told, I'm not in the chambers that discuss this, but I think the reason is much higher or deeper than what Juan explained. The EU does not have authority over land law, neither directly on property law, nor directly on planning law. And the protocol was first submitted as a directive, including the land issues. But all except one single country, members of the EU, resisted and said, no, we do not want to have EU direct intervention in areas that are not under EU. And the fact that the EU excluded land is, to me, makes a lot of sense. As I said, land is extremely local. Land is tradition, land is interests, land is history, land is sensitivity, land is emblems, land is symbols, and both financial and symbolic, and it's difficult to address land. So it was no coincidence, and that country was not the Netherlands. The Netherlands too resisted. I know the name of the country, but I won't mention it. And then we have other Mediterranean, 2 Mediterranean countries who are not members of the EU, and the protocol applies to them. And then 2 countries that are totally out of these schemes. Now, all these countries, you will notice, are members of the OECD. That means that they are advanced economies. The reason is that when you assess governance and legal compliance you have to have some kind of a common denominator of capacity to govern, and we did not include developing countries. Certainly, we could have expanded it to other countries that are not OECD members and are not developing countries, such as China. China, to me, is not a developing country anymore, and it's a very sophisticated governance. And of course, there's Singapore and Taiwan, who are not members of the OECD, etc. But these are our countries. It's a huge sample of all OECD countries. There are only 36 of them. So I don't know, you might stop me at some point, but I thought that these points are very important for the platform of our ideas. And even if I do have to stop before I finish this presentation, we have managed to find a way to share the entire set of the comparative chapters without breaching the strict copyright rules of Routledge. Routledge is one of the leading academic publishers. So we found this way, and we can share the document, not the full book, but all the comparative. These are over 100 pages. A good size of the book is comparative. We cannot share the entire book, but perhaps individual authors, you have all their names in the concept note. They are able to share individual copies if they wish, and they're able to put it on their private websites, not public ones. These are our 10 commandments. We have interpreted the ICZM protocol as having two aspects. This is not exactly the same wording. Juan, thank you for mentioning. It is the two researchers that you mentioned are Sigal, Pelach, and myself. And in our book, we make this distinction. We possibly also make it in the report to the EU, which was published in 2016. So the hardware are the land property related topics. The software are the governance ones, except the compliance and enforcement of land related, number J, is in both of them, but it's not elegant to put it in the middle, because to enforce compliance on the beach or in the coastal area is land, certainly land, but the agency aspects are very important here. So the capacity to enforce, so we put it here for elegance. So we've got the very conception of the coastal zone. I will go through each of these, but I obviously won't finish the conception of what is the coastal zone. And then the shoreline definition, and you will see surprises there. The coastal public domain, which everybody knows. Coastal setback zones. Remember, in each of these, we have 15 countries' answers. And I can tell you already that there are no two countries with the same answer to any of these. The right of public, the coastal setback zone, which Zelika mentioned, the right of public access, land use planning, climate change, awareness and regulatory actions, public participation and access to justice. This is another one of those, where is the limit? What is good public participation? What is bad public participation? There's absolutely no way of judging this except on a comparative scale. Integration, coordination, and compliance and enforcement. And we also developed a very modest indicator. It's not very sophisticated because the book, like any academic book or most academic books, has no funding. So both Sigal and I worked for many hundreds of hours with no funding, and so did our very eminent contributing authors of each of the country. We developed a kind of a scale or a score of human pressure, not environmental, but actually quantitative. And the interesting thing here is the scale, and the rationale is that you cannot judge public policy. As we said, public policy is the art of the possible, and including laws. Laws are public policy, no more. They're tough public policy. They can lead to jail, but they're public policy. They can be changed by the public. So we said the pressure on the coast, Gianluca kind of hinted that when he gave the global quantity, the pressures on the coast are very, very different. And look at the difference between Slovenia. We would think Slovenia, the tiny country, would have high pressure on the coast. It doesn't. And Malta is the highest. Israel will be the highest because it has a much higher fertility rate than Malta. And look at the drop down, with Netherlands being the highest among our other countries. And yet look at the jump from the Netherlands to Israel. So the capacity to manage is not just population. Population means infrastructure, services, economics, trade, everything is, in the final analysis, we took this indicator. But we didn't develop it much more, just in the background when we kind of look at whether countries have done well or not. The conception of the coastal zone, we find this very interesting, although I can say right in the front that it has very little legal or public policy implications in our sense. It has implications on the environmental sense. So many of the countries do define the coastal zone in their legislation, in their national legislation. But this is not the same as the next definitions, the shoreline and the setback zone. This tends to be soft. And what we found intriguing is that there are different world views that we identified, I think, for the first time. And we kind of try to understand these world views. And we found, we tagged them as nature-led on the one hand, which means, for example, up to the dunes or up to the edge of the flora, or implementation-led, which would be something like the boundaries of the municipalities. And you see that countries, you cannot predict what countries say about this by their other scores. If you look at this, I won't go into this, but there is no way of saying, well, this country is more environmental and this country is less and has more implementation. And then we also have the scale of broad and specific. I think this is interesting for a paper. It didn't come out as very important in the rest, although this is the only sort of ideological element in the research. It reflects whether you think of nature or whether you think of implementation practice, how to get this done. And here is our analysis. We hope it's correct. We had to consult ocean experts and some geodetic experts. And we use this to compare the countries, and I'll put this right on. Sorry, I'm mumbling because I'm hiding myself. I'm hiding my camera, with you pictures. I got to get the pictures off. You know how this works. Oops, where am I? Am I in the right place? I'm hiding myself with the pictures. There, I moved them down. So you see that, Zelika, this should, I think, interest Baprak a lot. Countries differ a lot, and probably historically, we're not sure when all this started. There is no uniform international way of saying this is where the coast begins. But in order to do ICZM policies, and of course the sea has no boundaries, environment has no boundaries, but countries with the same sea, and even ones that are very similar to each other and close to each other geographically and in the EU, they have very different definitions of, am I in the right? Again, I can't see. Am I in the right transparency?
Yep.
Yes, Sigal. And you can see that they're very, very different. There is no ideology here, but it matters tremendously for how you measure the two very functional aspects in the ICZM Mediterranean legally binding protocol for the countries who signed it, and that's the majority, and for the countries that ratified it, which is the majority of the majority. And it's as legally binding in domestic international law. You see that the very definition of where you start measuring is extremely different. Again, look at the picture. So now let's look.
Sorry, Rachel.
I skipped one?
No, I just wanted to
yes,
point
please,
out
can people see you? Can people see you?
I'm not sure. I just wanted to point out that
yes, Sigal, we see you.
Okay, great, thanks. I just wanted to point out that none of these definitions match up exactly with the ICZM protocol, which says the highest winter water line. So that's the wording in the protocol itself. And then we have all these different definitions in the countries.
Right, thanks. And you see how different these can be in terms of everything, environment, setback, and so on. So now the functional aspects of this definition is the coastal, where does the coastal public domain come? The coastal public domain is so important for in all the countries in our 15 country sample do have a coastal public domain. That also includes Australia and the US, most of the US states, but not all countries in the world have a coastal public domain. For example, Finland has private property running straight well into the water, and there are many US states like that, some US states. So there's other countries. I don't know if there's a global, I don't think there is no global. We had to do all this by ourselves. Now this transparency took us endless analytical time and endless rounds with our contributing authors, because trying to put together the different, very different definitions of where the shoreline starts, and then the definitions of where the public domain extends, that took us many, many, many hours, scores of hours. And now you can see that if we put the countries vis-a-vis so if you look at Germany, it looks like it has a very large public domain, but if you take it against its definition of the shoreline, then it doesn't, etc., etc. Spain is the winner, if you wish, in this entire research. It has a huge, huge public domain, and its definition of the shoreline is entirely environmentally driven. So Spain is here, but you will see if we get to it, that Spain has had very difficult issues with trying to implement this on the ground, making thousands of people really become propertyless. Without property, this issue continues until today. So the setback zones, again, we had to put three topics together: the shoreline definition, the public domain definition, and the setback. The setback is not necessarily public property, so that it is a different definition. And we have here the setback of less than 100 and more than 100, and you can see the various countries. And we can say already a major finding for the PAPRAC that only 2 countries moved their setback domain in response to the ICZM protocol. Some of the countries already had this setback, such as Spain and France, but only 2 that did not moved it. And those are Israel primarily, which actually went through the, even before the protocol, while the protocol was evolving. And Malta is doing something now, much smaller. The other countries remain as they are. So if you want to say not abiding with, but as I said, land is extremely difficult. What do? Spain is encountering this. And Sigal, I don't think that I forgot to put. I don't know if you know the Mediterranean knows that the Spanish issue reached the European Parliament, and there's European Parliament decision against Spain on this issue because of thousands of people whose property, which some of it was legal in terms of planning law, some of it was not legal in terms of planning law, but it was private. It became non-property in the kind of a twilight zone, and this reached the EU because there are many overseas investors. So these are major topics to try and implement. Spain is brave, but then those issues on the ground continue legally and politically. So that's this finding. Now, not all the topics will I go into in detail. There are 10 of them, but if I have time, as many as I can. The right of access, we at first, okay, so we said right of access, kind of, you got to have a strip of land that you can move on. And then usually this just says right of access in the various international norms, whether the ICZM protocol or the European policy. But then we went more deeply into this, and we for ourselves defined not 2, but 5 expressions or manifestations of accessibility. One, horizontal, everybody knows, along the shore. That is mentioned, protected, if countries do abide by it, by the ICZM Barcelona Protocol, and it is definitely a norm in many countries. Not all, but in many countries. In the US, it's a big issue, and in those countries that do have this, it comes to the courts all the time, endless. Here you have the Florida beach, no trespassers, fight between the private and the public. The vertical one, the vertical meaning from inside the city to the shore. This is totally different, and it means to have access, and we also expanded this to have view access. That means planning regulation. It means road construction. It means other public and private infrastructure construction. It means even ports to the limits that one can regulate ports. So vertical, we found some countries with, some countries without, and you'll see the countries in a minute. A much tougher topic to regulate. Horizontal is difficult because it's land, but it can be very close to the shore. And in some countries, it includes only the water near the shore. Some countries includes a bit of land, but it can be done. The vertical requires a mindset. We found the vertical to be much less present. And then we also said there are many social aspects to accessibility. We all use the word accessibility when we talk about disabilities, into accessibility to buildings, accessibility to the network, to Google, accessibility for people with disabilities. We looked at that as well. We found relevant court decisions. Social justice, social justice and accessibility. That is not just for people with disabilities, but the payment to go into the coast, if it's a firewall, as we say on the internet, then we found this issue of social justice. Do poor people, can they pay to get in and access to the view, which I see I separated that from the vertical, but I spoke about that as well. And here are the results, almost like the Eurovision results or the football. No national legal rules for vertical accessibility. General rules, just talk about it, and numeric standards. Greece and Spain have numeric standards for vertical accessibility. In Israel, we have no regulation. In Israel, we do have a new plan that regulates this, as it is binding. And before that, court decisions by civil society, lots of changes through civil society. That was only one of the 5. There's no time for all of them. Now let me go, let me conclude this. These were the hardware topics, the tough ones with the land. I'm now switching to the software, to the governance ones. The first one is land use planning. And because land use planning regulations exist in all OECD countries, by the way, not in the entire world, but yes, in all OECD countries, but Gianluca knows many countries that are struggling to kind of make workable, developing countries workable planning laws. All our countries have functioning land use planning. But then, so what do we look for? We look for indicators. We said, is the ICZM protocol mentioned in planning as for the coast? Do we have a dedicated coastal planning body? Because if the coast is so special and ICZM is so special, and it requires all those ambitious, almost inhumane in the sense that decision bodies are made by humans, integration and coordination, these run against the DNA of institutions. They don't like to coordinate and they don't like to integrate. Those are institutions. Well, are there at least dedicated planning bodies that try to put this together on the ground? If they're not dedicated, then those ideas are going to be mesmerized and dissipated in clash with the many other planning goals and objectives. So we also look to see whether there are special regulatory instruments and whether special dedicated plans for the flow. We found all three only in France and in Israel, and look at the others. Quick look, again, all of you can have the comparative chapters to look at these in detail. Later, you see that we also differentiated between advisory bodies and regulatory bodies, and so on. So the next topic is, and I'm again hiding my, I gotta move
back.
The pictures. Ugh.
You skipped.
I skipped one. You see, I can't see because your pictures. I gotta get rid of them. There, I got rid of them. Where am I?
And forward instead of back. Go back.
I'm going there. Okay. So
next.
France is really France has got a lot of institutions. Australia, Victoria has a lot of. In Australia we looked at only on Victoria. It has several states, and they're all different. Like the United States, they're all different on this topic, not the same. Climate change. Well, even though climate change has gotten so much attention in recent years, we did not research this post-corona. But pre-corona, we're up to date. This book was published now, and we even had some updates in 2019. So we ranked the countries along the degree of specificity of the regulatory framework in addressing climate change. So not in the environmental knowledge, that is addressed by many others, but to the how specific is the word climate change? Does it just say climate change, or does it look at tier 1, specific regulations addressing concrete climate change impacts? And those countries in tier 1, this is our comparative scale from 1 to 5. So the specifics: Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, France, UK, Spain, and some local jurisdictions in the USA. Australia and Israel, in its very new plan, it has specifics. Greece, Italy, Portugal, and the number 5, US on the federal level. The book was published during, well, went into press during Trump era. You know what that meant for climate change. But especially bad are Florida and North Carolina. Now, participation, like integration and coordination, the sky is the limit. But here we want to point out the paradox of participation. I'm a planner and lawyer, and I teach planning theory, and I write in planning theory. Public participation is supposed to involve the public that beyond the legal, involve the public beyond access to justice and beyond elected government. But it is supposed to reflect the public for better or for worse. So here we have two pictures. At the bottom is this Spanish endless fights and protests by the people, or some of them. I also had a video of the group that attended our final conference. Zelika, your deputy attended our Valencia conference in the Mare Nostrum, and then they came to protest within the meeting. Top is a very interesting Israeli accomplishment by the civil society. This was supposed to be a hotel, yes, 100 meters away, but this was supposed to be a kind of, what do you call those, vacation hotel, something like that. It's on national land. It had a contract with national government. It had a building permit. They were already putting up fences because the contract and the permits were granted in the 90s when civil society tried to protest but wasn't as strong. This was halted by kids, young people who stepped on the bulldozers. And for the first time, took many years, and there is a government controller report about this. Government has to pay millions in compensation for to the developer, even though it's public land, because there was a contract, and it has a building permit, which is through public authority. In Israel, we have extreme compensation rights if a building permit is taken away, is downscaled, unlike, say, Spain, which has no or very little such rights, and many other countries in this group. And for the first time, government is negotiating, took many years. The permit was canceled, and government is negotiating with the developer for compensation so that this is totally back to the beach. So we have this the civil society and the courts. We see court action, especially in Israel, very prominent. We have a common law system so that access to the courts for judicial review is very easy, and the courts do intervene in environmental issues on public. Our access to the disabled is through court decision, and the cancellation of fees to access the beaches is also civil society achievements. So we have the two sides of public participation, and let's see, do we have the scale? We have scales in the book on these topics, but we did put them here. Integration and coordination. We noticed that in many of the not just the two international documents that we assess, but in many other, the UN has documents, OECD has documents, integration and coordination are often put together, but they're very different. And I know that the audience here knows this very well, but we defined integration vis-a-vis coordination. I will repeat again, government institutions, any institutions, do not coordinate and integrate on their own. There's a whole literature called Sociology of Organizations, which shows that organizations are even more stubborn than people. We take care of our own interests, our family interests. Organizations are even worse, say, analysts of organizations. So getting integration and coordination is not easy. We did put these, do we have this on the scale? No, we didn't. It's in the book and what you can get. We did put these on a scale in, at least in the coordination, where we try to look to what extent there are dedicated institutions to create this integration. So the paradox of organizations, because they will never coordinate on their own, is that you have to create another institution to coordinate among the non-coordinating institutions. So we looked at that, and we have a scale on that. And all countries, however good they are, and you know, Denmark on the international scale of trust in government and compliance, Denmark, Finland, Denmark, New Zealand are the highest in the world. Iceland used to be there, it's gone down a bit. In our countries, New Zealand gets very high scores on government. I mean, in international scores in good governance, and it too reported problems of integration and coordination. Let me say that is chronic and it's not chronic. This is what organizations are about. They're entities like humans. And we did look at initiatives to improve, and that's in the book. Here's a topic that is usually not addressed in the government reports, in the compliance reports with ICZM. They're very difficult to address. And when I presented this to an EU, to the EU, one of the EU DGs, I was actually stopped and said, do not discuss this in front of our countries. Well, academics discuss things, and you cannot control coastlines without realizing. And let me offer a concept. It's not yet published, but it's copyright, my copyright. Coastlines are magnets for non-compliance anywhere in the world. You could look at history before there was compliance, and you could look at today. Even holy Denmark, there is a report on some tiny bit on non-compliance only in the coast, tiny. So we do have a scale of that, but our scale is not absolutist. Our scale is also on the degree of improvement in compliance. And that one can assess, because improvement in compliance, you could see an indicator would be, are there new bodies to look at compliance? And to give, enforcement is not pleasant. Enforcement means clash with people and with companies. And it means a huge amount of money. It can mean lives. It can, I mean, I don't know how many suicides there have been, but occasionally there are when people's homes are demolished. And it could mean lots of things. It could mean not getting elected for the politicians. In my other work on compliance and other issues, we address these as well. So compliance is not, and enforcement are not very well addressed in any literature, and not in ICZM. We looked at such indicators of whether there is a rise, and that one could gauge, because if you look at the human resources, if you look at court decisions, if you look at public pro and con, you can see, for example, let me see, do we have the scale? Oh, here are examples. This is Portugal, the Ophir Towers, which were legal. They had a building permit. They are today eroding, and they need to be demolished. And we have Portuguese co-authors, but I was there on site. Governments cannot face this issue, so it's still there, although it's dangerous. And here is something that the Middle East people in this group, and there are many, I know there's a war on, but there's also ongoing life on the beaches. And look at this. I guess this happens along a lot of Mediterranean beaches. These are, in English, they're called gazebos, or in maybe it's Italian. These are big tents that people put up. They sometimes bring their kitchens. They bring fridges, and sometimes companies make this like they rent this out for a holiday. These block accessibility, but they're very, shall we say, they're bottom-up expression of vacation. Israel and some other Mediterranean countries never had the curse of summer homes. We just never did. In our history, maybe it's too hot, whatever. In our collective history, there are no summer homes in most of the countries. And certainly not along the Israeli coast. There have never been summer homes. And so these are kind of modest people's summer homes. The enforcement of these is very tough, and we interviewed the enforcement agents to see this is a cultural clash. The courts are now tough on these, but I see this as a really difficult clash between culture. This is not construction. This is all temporary and can be removed. So this is a challenge. And you're very welcome to look at our book. We also can share the guidelines for the authors and the guidelines that we use for the academic authors. But these are not, these may seem not exactly like guidelines that people are used from government projects. We're still very happy to share them. I'm happy to answer questions, and please, not about the Middle East. None of us are politicians. I mean, the Middle East situation, which we lament. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. It was very interesting. In fact, we did it. We did not good with the time with the time management, and I guess that we lost some people because the meeting was supposed to end at 12:30. So some people have some issues at 12:30. But in any case, I would open some time for discussion if some of the participants wants to react or comment or say something, because
let me just apologize. As I told Victoria up front, I cannot talk and monitor the time. So the way to stop me was to stop me, and I kind of offered even places. So I apologize if I went overboard unknowingly.
No, it's perfectly okay. It was so interesting that we didn't want to interrupt you, so don't worry. Well, so I don't know if someone wants to react or to comment. You could raise your hands. There's one reaction. Let me see. From Lebanon. I don't know how do we. There's Manal Nader from Lebanon. Can we give him the floor? Can we?
I'll take off the.
See him?
I'll take the presentation off.
Yes, I don't know how. Manal, can you hear us? Can you?
Yes, for sure. If you can hear me.
It will be good if we could see you too.
Right,
I don't know if that's possible or not, but well, in any case, while we try to solve it, perhaps you can start already.
Can you see me now? I think the camera is on.
Yes. Manal?
Now, yes. Okay,
hello,
perfect.
Okay,
we see you.
All right. Hello, and thank you very much for this session and allowing us to participate or inviting us to participate. I would just like to give a very brief, if you want, summary of what's been going on in Lebanon in terms of coastal zone management, because we started working on this as an Institute of the Environment at the University of Balaman with the Public Authorities Ministry of Environment, with Zelka. Hi, Zelka. Hi, I'm Marco, if you can hear me. And we had a lot of projects on coastal zone management that culminated at the end of the day with a draft law that we submitted to the government, and is currently, as usual, lingering along the political process to end up in Parliament. But with all the political issues that we have today, it doesn't seem to be the major, let's say, priority, as we all know in this part of the world. But my question is, because from the email, I understood that it was more to see how other experts or other institutions could actually contribute in the future to a more comprehensive, let's say, overview of what's happening in coastal zone management issues around the different countries. And my main question would be, how is that perceived? And is there a plan to have a more pan-Mediterranean, let's say, body within under the ICZM protocol with Velka and Marco and the team to develop a more comprehensive, let's say, overview of the progress in different nations? Because as I understood it, is that mostly it was the OECD countries that were concerned in this type of book that was our compilation of information. While on the other hand, we know that the majority of problems of habitat deterioration and infringement on the maritime public domains, et cetera, are mostly in the third world countries or the countries under development, whatever you want to put a term to that. Is there a plan to expand this to the other nations around the Mediterranean? That's number one. And if so, how would that going to be done? That's number two. Number three, which is completely off, I haven't been able to find a really good textbook because we have courses on coastal zone management in our programs and our department. Is anybody aware of a good textbook that addresses coastal zone management issues on undergraduate and graduate levels? And I think that the time is opportune now, and I think we have enough maturity in the field to develop a new textbook, because we are still relying mostly on the handbook of coastal zone management that was developed in the 90s, supported by different texts from different areas, which is becoming quite confusing. So this is something that can be perceived coming out from the Mediterranean area, especially that we know that a lot of work is being done in the Mediterranean with all these institutions, METPOL, RACSPA, PAPRAC, UNAP, FAO, everybody is here in the Mediterranean. So I think this is a suggestion that I would like also to propose to everybody that is here, to develop a very good textbook based on experience gained in the past 20 to 25 years for us to be able to teach. So these are the three questions that I want to pose to everybody. Thank you.
Yes, about the book, if you want to answer, Rachel.
Yes, gladly. I know that. Oh, where is the gentleman from Lebanon? There's an excellent. Hi, Manan. A recent book by Michelle Portman. Sorry, and I like it. It's a textbook. It's really a textbook. The reason is that it talks about how it's academic, but it's very accessible. It has examples, and it is both environmental and governance, but it is normative. Again, it doesn't take our book focus about the impediments, but it is normative of what should be. So I put the name on here, and I can look up the name, but if you put Michelle Portman and Springer is a publisher in Coastal Zone, you will find the book. Probably have to pay for it, but your library may be able to. And if Manal, I could share some things. I know that from Lebanon, you want me to share it through. I'll share it through Victoria.
Thank you very much. But I'm still wondering about the development of
yes,
a new book for the Mediterranean, not from the Mediterranean, but more an approach to teaching students in the area. Because if it's only one book, that means we are still very much behind on textbooks to be able to educate our students to be able to work in the field. And we know that they have to come out of universities, because we are all infringing on coastal zone management in a way through previous education that we have in marine sciences or marine biology or aquaculture or something like that. So it's just an idea that I would like to propose to everybody. Thank you.
Manal, do you mean an academic textbook?
Yes, academic textbook. I'm not being able to find something that is one book that is comprehensive about the issues of coastal zone management. You know,
well, if you look at that one, I'd be very happy to know your view of whether it kind of fills this hole.
All right, I will be.
In our book, we also survey the key books, but mostly on the so no, you need that book. I'm sorry.
All right. Okay, I'll check it out, and I'll be in contact with Victoria in case we need to go through this. Okay, thank you very much. And I have the other two issues: that what is going to happen with the other countries around the Mediterranean, and is there anything in the future to see where they are and how to go forward from there, especially that we ratified it and we have a draft law. So that's for everybody, I guess, and for the ISDN protocol team.
Well, for us, let's say that we see a window of opportunity when we saw this this report conducted by Rachel, and we thought that it will be very interesting also for the missing countries of the UFM, and that's why we proposed to organize this meeting as an introductory meeting, let's say. Now we will, well, we don't know exactly. We still have to decide together with UN Habitat. I don't know if we could see perhaps Gianluca here. Well, I don't know. In any case, we will discuss with UN Habitat how to follow up. But well, the idea is to identify the researchers in each one of the missing countries and try to do the same exercise that Rachel did, and then to present the results to government authorities, and also, well, to include in the process, well, UN Habitat, which is also already here, and perhaps OECD or for sure the UN Environment with Celica and Marco. So we will, well, it's we are still in the process of seeing how to move forward, but well, the idea is to find the most suitable way to do it. We will see. We didn't know how this meeting was going to be, if we were going to receive many, if people was going to be interested in the meeting or in the topic or not. So it was also difficult for us to decide on the future, because there was a bit of uncertainty in the reaction from countries, but we will try to see from now.
Right. Thank you. It's just because I know that Egypt and Lebanon have been working quite a bit on coastal zone management, and they're quite advanced. I know that Lebanon, like I said, we have the draft law that our team developed and submitted, and it was externally funded anyways from the United Nations. So,
but well, in any case, I think that your feedback on that and on what would be most useful for you will also will surely be interesting for us in order to draft how to continue in the process. So we will contact you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, we are extremely late. I don't know if someone else wants to take the floor and wants to comment or say something.
I wonder whether, we have others. I also want to say personal hello to Aisha.
Yes. Yes, let's see if no one
no,
wants.
There is someone, Dr. Carlo Alberini.
Carlo wants to talk.
Yeah. I cannot see the raise hand.
He raised his finger.
Okay. If Carlo, can you talk?
Yes, if I may. Thank you.
Yeah, can we see him?
Thank you.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect.
Yes. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for this opportunity and this amazing webinar. I think that your work, it's a huge work, very useful, at different level, but I'm not here to propose compliments, but only to share with you a reflection. Integrated coastal zone management in developed country, I think that could be tools to try to manage conflict between users, between subject, stakeholder. But actually, I work in Morocco. I'm urban planner, and I thought that integrated coastal zone management in this type of country where not all the shore, not all the coastal zone have already subject to the amazing pressure that in Mediterranean and developed country are experienced, maybe could be a tool not to solve or try to solve or fix small problems, because the type of use come from at least 2000 years. in developing country, integrated coastal zone management could be a tool for planning and try to avoid this type of issues rather than try to fix. I think this is a strategic change probably of point of view, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to work in the Global South, because myself, it's completely different environment. So I have to change my point of view. And I think your work could be very interesting also for that reason, because Global South can beneficiate more in planning rather than Northern country. That it's another type of environment and building and building and building on the coastline over here. It's only a point of view, and I would like to share and your comments about this.
Thanks very much. A personal thanks. I think you're saying that in developing countries, an improvement makes a bigger leap,
Exactly.
a more significant leap than in developed countries. Thank you.
Because it's a white paper. There are a lot of kilometers that are white paper. It's more easy.
Yes. White sand.
Plan. Exactly. It's more easy to plan rather than fix. Because the pressure, the economic value of the coastline in developed country, it's well known. So here it's completely different. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. I cannot see anyone else.
Can I ask if we have any of our authors, we don't know because we can't see all the, can they just say hello? Any of our contributing authors? Hi, here's Leah. She says she has to leave.
Yeah, hi.
Okay, Leah is our co-author. I mean, she co-authored the Greek chapter. Here she is. Hi,
yes.
Leah.
Hi.
She's now in the Netherlands, and she's a brilliant scholar in geodesics, surveying, and planning.
Yeah, it was a awesome presentation of the book, and thank you very much for this presentation, Rachel and Sigal, and also for this event. It's a great opportunity to promote and improve further this initiative, to record what exactly are the legal and regulatory frameworks in the coastal zone. So I think that the Union for the Mediterranean is the appropriate body and platform in order to promote this idea. And it was also a great journey collaborating with you both, Michelle and Sig.
Totally mutual. Any other authors in the book, from the book, present?
I think they had to leave already.
Okay.
Yes, in fact, we have to finish because the translators need to rest. They have been already translating for 2 hours in a row. So I think that we can stop it here. We can process all this information. We receive many expressions of interest from researchers, but well, I guess that now they will have a more clear idea of what the research is about and what we aim to do, and we will see how to continue from there. But let me give the floor to Ayşe Asya, the Deputy Secretary General here at the Union for the Mediterranean in charge of urban development, to conclude the meeting. So Ayşe, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, we are grateful to all our panelists for making this meeting very interesting for us. And we will definitely draw upon the advice that we had today. In the future, we intend to follow up this coastal zone management issue with further events. But the idea is, at the end of the day, we need to link up with the international organizations and NGOs and universities to produce a result. So that's what we have in mind. We are looking forward to coordinate efforts and to see how best we can move forward. The most important priority for us is promoting a systemic approach. So we would very much like to see this issue included in the national urban policies, for example. Mm-hmm. We would like the countries to take into account this coastal zone management issue as part of the overall national urban policies, integrated into their national urban policies. And we have to consult with all of you to see how best to proceed forward in this regard. Thank you very much, and special thanks to Professor Alterman and also to Sigal Pella for this very interesting and pioneering research, if I may say so. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Gianluca, who helped out when we thought about this. Thanks all.
Yeah, thank you. And we stay in touch. We will come back to all the participants on how to continue. Bye-bye.
All the best, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, all the best.
Bye.